Friends, welcome once again to my YouTube channel. And we are discussing Alexander Pope's The Rape of the Lock. And as per my proposal in my last video, in this session we are going to discuss two more important things associated with the satiric poem The Rape of the Lock by the famous poet Alexander Pope. In the previous session of this discussion, we discussed about the implications or the connotations of the title of the poem, The Rape of the Lock. And then we also discussed about the features of satiric poetry that we find in The Rape of the Lock. And now it's time for us to take into consideration two more issues which are very important for our understanding of the poem. And the first one is the mock epic or mock heroic aspects of this poem. This poem, as I told you in the previous audio session, this poem itself is subtitled as an heroic comical poem by the poet Alexander Pope himself. Now, what is the meaning of the word mock epic or mock heroic or heroic comical? If we begin with the term mock epic is a term which refers to something or which refers to a particular type of writing in which the writer applies some epic conventions, some standard norms of epical poetry to something which is totally non-epical in spirit. We must here remember that mock epic does not refer to mocking at the epic or imitating or copying the epic. Rather, it means what? Once again, if we repeat the definition of a mock epic refers to a particular type of writing where the writer or the poet chooses to employ some kind of epical conventions to a thing which is totally non-epical in characteristics, non-epical in spirit. What are the standard features of epic poetry? Epic poetry is something that has a very grand theme, first of all, and not only the theme is grand, but also the stylistic execution is equally grand. The style of an epic, it comprises a very selective use of words, very grand or ornamental words are used. The speeches, they're really witty speeches or ornamented speeches. Now, epic similes, long similes are used in epic poetry to heighten the epical effect. So not only the theme is grand, but also equally the stylistic execution of an epic is equally grand. We can, for example, think of John Milton's famous epic poem Paradise Lost. There, not only the theme is grand, but also we can think of the different speeches by Satan, which are equally grand, and then the allusions from classical literature, then the long epical similes that are used by the poet there. So these are the all things that make the stylistic execution of Paradise Lost equally grand. In tune with the grand theme itself. But in a mock epic, what will happen is that our theme will be something which will be trivial, which will be light-hearted, which will be something based upon a very light-hearted or frivolous theme, or a theme which is full of vanity. But this theme will be this theme will be expressed in a kind of style which will be very grand. So there will be a mismatch between the theme and the execution of the theme, or in the stylistic expression or execution of the theme. The theme will not be grand. The theme will be something very slight. The theme will be something very light-hearted. The theme will be something very trivial. But the stylistic aspects, the choice of words, the epic similes, the invocation, these things will be much like those used in a conventional epic poem. So this is mock epic. Now, when this thing happens, when there is this mismatch between the theme and the execution of the theme, or the theme and the style, then definitely some incongruity arises, and this incongruity leads you to comic laughter. Now, once again, to relate it with the very standard concepts of satire, what did we observe in our last video, or in our last discussion on the general patterns of satire? That satire, yes, in a satire we laugh, but that is not the all the purpose, or all the important purpose of satire. Laughing is there, laughter is there, but apart from that, a greater social rectification is also there in satire. So in mock epic we also find that kind of a thing. Yes, it provokes laughter, but this laughter is not horse laugh. This laughter is also thoughtful laughter. Why thoughtful laughter? Because this laughter is not only meant to entertain your wits on the surface level, but this is also directed to some kind of lesson that is imparted to you while you laugh. So the purpose of mock epic, of writing mock epic, is always twofold. First, it entertains you, and second, it gives you some moral or ethical lesson. It has something, some very deep or some very inner great message to convey to you. This is the usual pattern of a mock epic poem. And here also what happens is that Pope takes up the theme. And what is the theme of the Rape of the Lock, which we have already discussed in the other video? The theme is the cutting of a lock of hair of Belinda. Belinda is the fictional name of Miss Arabella Farmore, you should remember here. And this lock of hair was cut off by the Baron. So this is the trivial theme. This is the slight theme. But Pope does what? Pope adds an invocation. Pope becomes very serious in the choice of words. Then there is the use of long similes in the manner of epic similes in the poem. Now, what is the purpose of that? The purpose is to arouse the feeling of incongruity. The purpose is to arouse the mismatch between the theme and between the execution. The theme is slight, the theme is trivial, and the execution is grand. So this mismatch, this incongruity between the theme and between the execution arouses. So in mock epic, what the writer does is that he is making the trivial even more trivial. He is making the thing which is funny even funnier. He is doubly exposing the thing which is fit to be exposed. He is doubly denuding the thing which is already appropriate to be denuded. And now Alexander Pope exactly does that in Rape of the Lock. He chooses a theme, a society which is already a light-hearted society, a society where there is no moral or ethical seriousness, a society which suffers from a kind of social or moral or even ethical vacuum. But he places at the center of that society the well-decorated, well-dressed and well-embellished, well-ornamented lords and ladies who are always attended upon by the sylphs and spirits. So this creates a kind of very grand atmosphere in that. But that grand atmosphere, that grand stylistic execution of the matter, it does not at all match the true spirit of the theme itself. The theme is slight. The cutting off of a lock of hair from Belinda's head by the Baron, the seventh Lord Peter, but this slight theme is coupled by a kind of stylistic execution which is to be found only in epic poetry. So in this, the poem becomes a very great lively example of mock heroic or heroic comical or the mock epic. And what is the purpose? The purpose, once again, if we remember, is to make the trivial even more trivial, is to make the funny funnier, is to doubly expose the thing which is already fit or appropriate to be exposed. Now Pope does that in the Rape of the Lock. Now, this is the mock heroic aspect of the poem. And now, apart from this, there is yet another major issue which we must discuss in relation to this poem, and that is the use of the supernatural machinery here. Supernatural machinery is very much a part of epic poetry. And what happens in a machinery is that machinery refers to that part of an epic where the demons, where the goblins, where the spirits or other supernatural beings like ghosts, they are presented. Now, these beings do what? They are sometimes in combat against the human beings. Some other times they befriend the human beings. Now, these beings are employed by epical poets in order to heighten the epical impact or the epical effect of their poetry. Now, yes, in Paradise Lost also there are the angels and devils. Now, they are very much the part of the epic machinery. For example, we can also think about the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Yes, the epic machinery is here based upon the gods and goddesses and also upon the demons, the Rakshasas, and so on. Now, in The Rape of the Lock, there is also the use of a supernatural machinery by Alexander Pope, and that machinery is based upon the Rosicrucian doctrine of spirits. Now, who are the Rosicrucians? The Rosicrucians refer back to a group of classical or ancient scholastic philosophers. According to them, the human body, the human person, or the human being, when a human dies, then the body is destroyed, but that does not mark an end or destruction of the soul. The soul comes out of the body and the soul goes back to the original elements. The soul mingles with the original elements. The elements are what? Soil, then fire, then water and air. These are the four original elements according to the Rosicrucian philosophers. Now, Pope takes the idea from the Rosicrucians, but he brings a very slight modification to the idea. The Rosicrucian philosophers, they spoke about the human race in general, but Pope particularizes it and he speaks about the women in particular. According to him, when the women die, their souls are not destroyed. The souls come from the bodies, the souls come out, and the souls then they take up the contour, the texture of some spirits in accordance with the characteristic disposition of the ladies when they were alive. So when the quarrelsome women die, their souls come out of the dead body and they mingle with the spirit of the fire and take up the name of the salamanders. Then the mischievous women, when these women die, their souls come out of the body and they get mingled with the spirit of the soil and take up the name of the gnomes, Gnome. Then the submissive women, after their death, their souls mingle with water and they take up the name of the nymphs. And finally the sylphs, yes, when the coquettish women, those women who were really experts in flirtatiousness or in coquetry, the masters of coquetry, when these women die, their souls come out and they mingle with the spirit of the air and they take up the name of the sylphs. Now, these are the four spirits according to Pope, and naturally, quite easily, we can say that yes, he is much indebted to the Rosicrucian philosophers for this theory, but he brings a very slight modification to the theory. Now, Pope does what? He employs this supernatural machinery to the Rape of the Lock. Now, what is the purpose of adding this supernatural machinery to the poem? The purpose seems to be threefold. First, these spirits and sylphs, they help Pope to maintain a kind of dramatic objectivity or dramatic detachment from the central situation. Pope as a poet never interferes or never intervenes into the situation. He rather hurls ironical or critical comments on the situation indirectly. He keeps himself aloof from the situation and he rather does what? He accuses the spirits and the sylphs for all the misdemeanors, for all the misdeeds, for all the misgivings of not only the individuals but also of the whole society of early 18th century London itself. And at the same time, in the same process, he maintains dramatic objectivity or dramatic detachment from the situation. So the machinery helps helps Pope to maintain a kind of dramatic aloofness or dramatic detachment, or in other words, dramatic objectivity from the central situation itself. Now, the second purpose is that Pope here tags the contemporary men and women of this morally and ethically bankrupt society with the light-hearted, with the frivolous, with the mischievous spirits. These spirits are always in search of mischief. They roam in different corners of the world in search of mischief. Similarly, these men and women, the young men and women of the 18th century, they do what? They are not at all attached with any serious affair in life. They are not concerned with the upgradation of the social or ethical standards of living. They are rather always busy in flirting, in coquetry, and always are there in search of mischief. So they are much like the light-hearted spirits themselves. Now, these supernatural beings, this supernatural machinery, helps Pope to do what? To convey to his readers, to demonstrate to his readers the ethically diminutive stature of contemporary young men and women. This is the second purpose. The third purpose of using or applying this supernatural machinery to the poem is what? This is essentially associated with a mock heroic strategy, which we have already discussed. In a mock heroic or mock epic, you do what? The writer applies some epic conventions to a situation or to a theme which is totally non-epical in spirit. And here Pope's theme, yes, that is very much non-epical in spirit, but Pope does what? Against that slight or against that trivial theme, he applies or he makes use of the supernatural machinery of sylphs and spirits, which is very much to be found in an epic poem like Milton's Paradise Lost, or in other epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So here there is a kind of indirect comparison between the epic, which is very grand in theme and also in stylistic execution, and the non-epic, the mock epic, which has a very slight theme but a very grand execution of the theme, and thereby leading to a kind of incongruity which becomes the occasion for comic laughter. So that is the third purpose of employing the supernatural machinery in the Rape of the Lock, to make the trivial even more trivial, to make the funny even funnier. This is something which is very much associated with a standard mock heroic or mock epic, or even we can say heroic comical strategy. Now, if we sum up our discussion, we have been discussing about the Rape of the Lock throughout the two videos, and now it's time for us to conclude our discussion. And now, if we sum up, we shall see that the Rape of the Lock, even 306 years after its composition, we can think of the 1714 version, which is the modern version, which is still the current version of the poem that we study. So 306 years have passed, but still the poem retains its contemporary relevance even in the 21st century, not only as an integral part of the university curricula, but also as one of the most favorite literary texts for the lovers of poetry in general. Why? Joseph Addison, a very well-known 18th century writer and critic, who was a very great writer of non-fictional prose, he did not like the 1714 version of the Rape of the Lock. Particularly, he was critical about the insertion of the supernatural machinery of the Rosicrucian spirits in the poem. But the posterity, the men of the future generations, they thought otherwise. And the Rape of the Lock, as I have already told you, it enjoys great readership even among the readers and thinkers and students and even critics or scholars of the 21st century. Why? Because of its general spirit of criticism, of social satire. So long as men and women they will continue to be frivolous, so long as they will continue to be vain, so long as they will continue to lack in social or moral or even ethical seriousness, so long Pope's satire will continue to have material for that kind of society which suffers from all these misgivings of human civilization. So long as there will be vanity, so long as there will be frivolity of human thought, Pope's poem will be alive with its general note of social criticism, not only with the note of criticism, but also with a larger motto for a social or moral or even ethical rectification or correction. So, my dear friends, these things are all that I can share with you so far as a very general and a very short introduction to Alexander Pope's famous and great satiric masterpiece, The Rape of the Lock, is concerned. I hope that both my two videos on The Rape of the Lock will come to your help in understanding the general patterns, the general theme and structure of the poem itself. And if you were really happy with my video, with my audio, my discussion, if they have really helped you some way or the other in your understanding of the poem, then please subscribe to my channel, and there you wait for more academic videos or audios to come for you that might help to your general understanding of literature. So my dear friends, I once again thank you very much for listening to me all attentively. Thank you all. Thank you very much.